Hey guys, Ken here from the Retro Toyscapades channel. Today I'm checking out another old school episode from season 3 of the Transformers G1 cartoon. This one's titled The Killing Jar. Now I like this episode because it uses a plot device that was almost never seen in cartoons of the 1980s. Now you take a bunch of characters from different backgrounds, some good, some bad, some neutral, and force them to work together towards some common goal, usually personal survival. So the episode starts with Ultra Magnus looking out through a telescope into space and musing thought-provokingly as he says, "The stars seem so peaceful from a distance, but up close, they're so troubled." Now that is some deep stuff indeed. I guess after the events of the 1987 movie, where Autobots and Decepticons were openly slaughtered wholesale, the producers figured the show's kid audience were ready to handle even more heavy stuff in their cartoons. Anyway, little does Ultra Magnus realize that he's being spied upon by a Quintessons scientist and his robotic lizard-like guard. Actually, this got me wondering as to how exactly did the Quintessons have access to the private inner chamber of the Autobots to have them pulled up on screen like that? Do they have cameras all over Cybertron? So, in a convenient plot opportunity, the Quintessons ship has the ability to disguise itself as any other craft, and in this case, it turns into the Autobot Cyclonus in order to lure Ultra Magnus aboard their ship. It even has a voice emulator that allows it to sound like Cyclonus and presumably any other Autobot or Decepticon. Just how exactly would it have this intimate knowledge is never explained, but the story needs to progress, so we either go along with it or tune off and watch the Care Bears instead. Once aboard the craft, Ultra Magnus is attacked by a fake Rodimus Prime in a battle staged to gauge his reactions. The Quintessons scientist correctly predicts that Magnus would take great care in not harming his leader, despite the hostile attack. The Quintesson even admits to having a hand in Ultra Magnus's design, and as such would be able to predict his reactions. Now if that's the case, why is the experiment even necessary? I guess because Transformers are simply more than meets the eye. Ultra Magnus discovers that he's not battling the real Rodimus Prime and also realizes that he's now trapped within a cell surrounded by energy bars. He tries to fire one of his shoulder rockets at the bars, but the energy beams deflect the rocket and it lands to the ground with a thud. Now, I'm going to ask you guys to remember this scene because we are going to call upon it again in a bit. The Quintessons scientist then heads to Char to trap that Decepticon specimen Cyclonus. Oddly enough, they disguise themselves as the Autobot triple changer Broadside to lure Cyclonus. Now, did we sleep through something and Broadside is now double dealing as a Decepticon? Realistically though, this is more likely a lazy animation decision and error, something that Season 3 was famous for. Inside the Quintessons ship, Cyclonus is assaulted by an illusion of Galvatron before being captured, and the scientist remarks how both Ultra Magnus and Galvatron are two of a kind. One is good, and the other is evil. Well, no kidding, man. Almost like mirror opposites, actually. But he also mentions how he has knowledge of Cyclonus's inner programming. But this is just impossible because unlike the other Transformers, Cyclonus was not created by the Quintessons. Cyclonus was created within the heart of Unicron as seen in the animated movie. So maybe the scientist got a bit ahead of himself or was simply trying to impress his robotic lizard assistant. But either way, he got his facts wrong. With two in their bag, the Quintessons next head to the planet of junk to get themselves a Junkion. So they trick Wrecker into boarding their craft on the pretext of being the host of his favorite TV show. Unlike the others, Rhaegar isn't given a sparring partner. The Quintessons figure that just the sight of a clean cell, free of junk, is enough to put him into a coma. But boy, did they read him wrong. Rhaegar commences to rip up pieces of the metal walls and flooring and turn the place into a scrap heap so he can relax in it. Admittedly, Rhaegar is pretty awesome. Next, the Quintessons decide to get their tentacles on a human female for experimentation. They select Marisa Fairborn of the EDC, or Earth Defense Command. Now, longtime fans will know that Marisa is actually the daughter of G.I. Joe's Flint. G.I. Joe, of course, being another Hasbro toy, cartoon and comic book property, and with a similar animated production house as the Transformers. So, they disguise their shuttle again and arrive at her base of operations as her father. Now, although he's never mentioned by name, this is clearly an older and senior version of Flint, making this episode secretly a G.I. Joe Transformers crossover. So Marisa follows her dad onto the shuttle only for him to reveal his true nature as a horrific-looking Quintesson human hybrid. Okay, so I was impressed with how genuinely disturbing this creature looks, with everything about it being human except for that Quintesson head. Needless to say, Marisa handily defeats the illusion, girl power, and then discovers her true surroundings. And in separate cells around her, she sees the other trapped inmates. Just then, the Quintessons reveal themselves and the scientist informs his victims that they are nothing more than insects to be studied on and disposed of. They decide to start with Marisa and activate a submission device that causes a beam of light to break out within the cell and which subdues Marisa to the ground. But just as they are preparing to get their hands on her, Rhaegar saves the day. See, I told you he was awesome. So Rhaegar is conveniently located in the cell directly opposite Marisa. Now I say convenient in that if this was Cyclonus' cell instead, the story would have a completely different outcome. So anyway, Rhaegar fires a hand rocket through the energy bars of the cell and at the controls for the cell submission device, which is also conveniently located directly opposite his cell, and dismantles it. Okay, although that did the trick, but just how exactly did that move work? We just saw Ultra Magnus trying to dismantle the bars earlier with his shoulder rocket, but the bars clearly deflected it. And now Rhaegar's hand rocket is able to shoot straight through them? I mean, get the hell out of here! Anyway, Marisa is now free and starts kicking the Quintesson around like a football. She also manages to short-circuit out the controls for the rest of the cells, freeing the rest of them. But we're at the middle mark of the episode, which means that the characters have to be put through some form of calamity before the show breaks for an advertisement. And true enough, everyone starts screaming and writhing about in pain as the ship gets rocked by giant electric beams. It turns out that the Quintesson ship has flown straight into an electron storm, one that promises to tear everyone and everything apart. And so on that cliffhanger, I'm going to end part 1 of this episode review. Check back soon for the second part, which promises to contain even more observations and criticism, but only because we love classic content like this so much that we can't stop obsessing over every detail. Meantime, if you've seen The Killing Jar, do share your thoughts below on what you thought of this episode. Thank you for joining me and hit the bell to get notified when part 2 goes up.